Thanks for coming out on this rather chilly evening. I'm, as Peter said, Sarah Clark. I'm the Program Manager for Web Developer Training and Certification at Google. And this is our team. So this is my training and cert crowd. And you're actually going to meet the certification folks this evening. We're going to talk through our developer certification. We're going to walk through the Mobile Web Specialist certification, give you some background on how we built it, because let's be honest, who isn't a little bit wary of certifications, right? They're kind of, people don't think they're the best thing necessarily. Well, I'll tell you, we've got something pretty special that we've built. And then we'll get a demo of how it works. And then I'm going to talk about how do you study for it. I'll give you some fairly specific advice on how to prep yourself for the certification. And later today, Rob Dodson's coming up, and he's going to do a primer on accessibility on one part of the certification where just about everybody gets in trouble. So, all right. This is Meg.
Hi, everybody.
Our testing guru.
Thanks, Sarah. Everyone, my name is Meg Bauman, and I'm an engineer on the Mobile Web Specialist certification. And I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about why I think the certification is so great. And as you can see from this great picture here, we are mobile. Everybody's using their phones these days to interact with the web. Even these teddy bears. Teddy bears are doing it. I'm doing it. You guys are using your phone. Even my grandmother has a smartphone, and she's using it to interact with the web. It's pretty great. But sometimes that experience can still be less than enjoyable. How many of you have seen some horrendous websites when you're on your phone? Anybody? Anybody out there? Yeah, right? And as a developer, sites like that make me very, very sad. Much like this poor pooch up here, who's clearly not having a very good day. And neither are you guys when you're using a crappy site on your phone. There's a lot of pinching and zooming for text that's too small to see, or the images just slowly load line by line for minutes at a time. Or you're trying to check out on your phone with a form, and you can't seem to fit your fingers on the radio buttons, and you're trying to see that concert really, really bad, but you can't because the form is terrible. I know you've all experienced stuff like this before. It's super frustrating. I'm right there with you. But unfortunately, it's also pretty common. So what can you do? Well, there's a need for developers out there, people like you, that have a deep understanding of mobile web best practices, how to build websites that look great and perform even better on mobile. But there's a problem. How do you, as a developer with this deep knowledge, with all these great skills, how do you set yourself apart when you're job searching? There are a lot of developers out there, and it can feel a little bit like you're in an I Spy book. Anybody read those as kids? You remember what those look like? Well, if you're not familiar, they look a little bit like this. And basically, the employer, they're trying to look for a blue teddy bear, and you're this blue teddy bear up here, but you're like behind the lamp and the trophy, and no one can even tell that you're blue because the picture's black and white. What are you going to do? It's really a problem. I remember when I was first job searching, I was told to create a portfolio for myself and collab on all these great side projects with my friends, publish them on GitHub, trying to get those green squares, am I right? Those green squares, so good. I hoped my activity one day would look a little something like this. Had high hopes for myself, very high hopes. Doesn't quite look like that today. I don't think even Adi Osmani's GitHub activity looks like this. But yeah, so those are great tools for marketing, publishing on GitHub, portfolios. But sometimes it can still be hard to stand out. Everybody has a portfolio. How many of you built portfolios when you were first job searching for yourself, right? It's kind of an old hat, though. Employers, they're used to seeing that kind of stuff. And it doesn't necessarily set you apart from the get-go. But what we try to do with our cert is help you market yourself. What we give is this great digital badge if you pass the certification, and you can put it right on that lovely portfolio that you built for yourself, or even right on that resume. Bring it with you into the interview. Show employers that you've got something different going on. It's an excellent way to market yourself. And as you all know, every little bit helps when you're job searching. And on the other side of that, for the employers out there, anybody? You have a need too. You need to fill those empty desks. But finding developers with a verifiable and dependable skill level can be time-consuming and expensive. What we try to do on this certification is provide you with a reliable and quick and inexpensive way of initially evaluating potential employees. Because although there are a lot of great training channels out there, like boot camps and online courses, and even CS degrees, it can still be hard to know how does that training translate in the workplace. Take this cat, for instance. Can it code in a professional setting? I don't know. Kind of looks like it's freaking out a little bit. What do you do when you're an employer and you're looking for these great candidates? Well, our cert tries to help you answer that by pushing people through our certification and taking actual coding challenges in a timed exam. And because of that, it really forces a strong understanding of JavaScript, HTML, CSS fundamentals, as well as how to make important design decisions quickly and efficiently. Sounds great, right? Those are a large part of what you're trying to discover in the interviewing process in the first place. And in addition to interviewing employers, you can also use this cert to introduce new technologies like progressive web apps or accessibility to your current employees as a way of keeping their skills sharp, keeping them on their toes, testing them, you know? It's a good idea. But outside of the job search, this cert can help in a lot of other ways too. It's also for empowering established developers out there. A lot of people like you out here tonight. You've been in the business about 3 to 4 years, you've got great experience, you're set up in your career, you've got your job. How can you give yourself an edge in your career? Well, the distinction of being Google certified could help you earn a promotion. It shows your boss that you're dedicated to keeping up with current technologies and best practices. And that's really what development is all about in the first place, right? I mean, learning new things, solidifying your foundation, continuing to keep up with those skills. And there are a lot of occupations out there that require proof of continuing professional education, because that's such an important part of any career. People like beauticians, EMTs, pharmacy techs, all those people require recertification in their skills in that field. So why not add mobile web developers to that list? We're specialists too, right? We're building amazing things on mobile these days, literal castles on your phone. Our certification is an easy and clear way of showing others that you care about the health of the web and that you're dedicated to making better websites that are easier for all types of users to experience. So with that, thank you, everybody. And now here's Peter with some certification deets. Deets.
Thank you, Meg. That was really great. What do we got here? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes this certification unique and how it might potentially be useful to you. First of all, it's performance-based. It's not just multiple choice questions as some certs out there. You actually have to write code to prove that you can respond to real-world coding challenges. It's also done online in a hosted exam environment, and that means that you can do it from almost anywhere, from your home or office on your own computer. We use automation to help us grade, and while we still do hand grading to understand the ways in which you might approach solutions that we hadn't anticipated, we do also include automated grading in the mix, and that has some benefits. Bill's going to give you a demo later. Here's Bill, so that you can see what that actually looks like in real life. So here's our certification environment. So presenting coding challenges in a protected online environment using automated grading provides some significant benefits. First of all, as mentioned before, you can do it when and where you want. You can do it in China, you can do it in Brazil, you can do it anywhere. As long as you have a stable internet connection and you can pass a very basic system compatibility check to make sure that your browser is up to date and that your latency is not so horrible if you have a really bad connection. But if you're somewhere reasonable, you should be able to get through that without any problems. We can also offer the cert at a very low cost. It's currently $99. We think that's pretty cheap. And more than that, for your $99, you get 3 attempts. So if you don't pass the first time, you can use it as a learning experience. And we have a study guide that we'll talk about a little bit later that you can use to help you scale up in the areas that you might not have worked on so much or haven't experienced in your working life. And finally, if you're an employer, as Meg mentioned, you can use the certification to screen job applicants. It's something that we can do in real time using real coding challenges, real world coding challenges, and should give employers a real good idea of whether or not you're somebody that's suitable for their particular job scenario, and all that without significant cost. So, and last, for successful candidates, we also are working on an alumni directory. This is a place where you're going to be able to advertise yourself. You'll get a little space to advertise yourself, and something that employers can use to search for potential candidates. So that's coming up. And Sarah's going to talk a little bit about the research that went into creating the certification. So Sarah, there you go.
Thanks. So there's a really interesting problem when you build a certification, and that is, how do you know you're testing the right things? And so you're supposed to do what's called a job task analysis, and usually it just takes watching a lot of people work and listening to them talk. But how many people think that web developers do the exact same thing every day? Nope, right? Our jobs are incredibly varied. And so what we did is we did a little big data. We went out and pulled down initially 5,000 job descriptions off the web, did some natural language processing, cranked on it, worked on it for a couple of weeks, and we came up with 3 perfect things that all developers needed to know: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Captain Obvious, thank you. So what we did is we then went out and started slicing other like 5,000 job title, or 5,000 entry slices of other job titles, and started comparing, and basically did these multiple angles on the field and actually distilled it down to a set of 7 areas, which we're going to go through, that it turns out do a really good job of telling, are you the kind of web developer that has to always look everything up? Or are you the kind of web developer who can figure out a problem and maybe you need to look up a method call or something, but you are, you've taken that step in your career that you've actually internalized most of it. So it's been a very interesting process, and we're going to have to go through it again sometime soon. So we usually do this about once a year. And so next time I'm hoping to take even bigger slices and get even better looks at the data. And then, so we did that analysis. It took us about 4 months. Peter Lubers was chewing his fingernails off that whole time. He wanted the whole thing done in 3 months. Data analysis took a while. Then we took another 6 months to build the cert, because we had to come up with the right set of questions. We had to come up with the right kinds of grading process. We had to score it correctly, and we had to give it to about 50 people and time them and see how long it took. And it was really interesting, because I thought, okay, is this too easy? Is this too easy? Rob Dodson took 4 hours. It's like, wait a minute. One of our DAs, like a genius DA, takes 4 hours. Okay, this is probably appropriately hard. Now, granted, he was making comments as he went and kind of debugging things in our stuff, but so we've actually tuned the test so that a 4-hour window is a really good verification about your skills. You don't have to be super developer, but you have to know your stuff. And you want to say something about how we did the analysis?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, more deets. So as Sarah mentioned, we've launched, and we've been live now for about 6 months and have collected some data and have sampled that data. This is our pie chart that you can see there. So after doing some analysis of our data, we discovered that, yes, as Sarah mentioned, it's a difficult exam, and the success rate for those with less than maybe 3-4 years is not so good. So it really is an intermediate to advanced certification. So if you're around the 3 to 4 year level of professional development experience, then chances are that you're going to pass. And we sampled it some more. But the type of experience is also a factor. So someone with less experience, but with more specific experience with mobile web apps and mobile-first technologies is more likely to pass in some cases than somebody that actually has more experience. So experience with things like vanilla JavaScript rather than writing apps with bulky frameworks like jQuery, for example, and working with newer technologies like progressive web apps, and even things like emerging concerns like accessibility. And I think Rob is going to talk a little bit about that later. So digging a little deeper into our data, here's our young developer again, digging. As well as validating the experience level, one of the things that we also found was, with our data, was how do individual coding challenges do depending on, for example, level of experience, and are people having problems with specific coding challenges more than others, and so forth. So we kind of tried to balance our exam based on that kind of data. And of course, we keep finding things that are interesting in the way that developers respond to our coding challenges, and we're constantly working to factor those into our grading. So part of the rationale for this cert is to promote industry best practices for mobile web development, which led us to create a study guide. And the study guide helps you prepare for the certification exam by outlining the competency areas that we expect you to understand and be able to write code against. And there I am on a Google bus going to work, doing a little studying. And the study guide also served as a kind of rubric, meaning an exam outline. It defines the exam content and the study materials, and also has links to articles and learning content on sites such as MDN and our own Google Code Labs that will help you prepare. So we really want you to succeed and to be outstanding in your field, like this little girl here. So there's a definite correlation between how much you use the study guide, how much you study, how much you work at preparing yourself, and how well you're going to do. So encourage you to use the study guide if you're going to take the certification exam. And even if you don't, you can download it and just have a look, and it's a useful learning tool. This is our website here, our page from it, and you can see the URL for the website, our website, and you can just click on it and download our study guide. I'm going to give you a quick look at the competency areas. So it covers basic HTML and CSS, as you would expect, and things like using responsive images to resize based on device screen, and networking, accessibility, again, something that Rob is going to talk about later, making sites viable for everyone, and performance-related stuff, making slow, resource-heavy websites performant on mobile devices, progressive web apps, and testing and debugging, which we'll have a look at later. Mobile web forms, which are important for a lot of purchases are being made on mobile phones, and so it's important that forms be easy to use for people using those kinds of devices. And throughout all of this, there are some ES 2015 concepts and syntax mixed in. So, all right. So Bill's going to come in and do a live demo, hopefully, if the gods of connectivity allow. We sacrificed a vegan chicken a little bit earlier. It was bleeding tofu all over the place. It was really a mess. So here's Bill.
Hey everyone, I'm Bill the Vegan Himmelsbach, and I'm here to do the live demo, but no worries, Peter. Live demos, what could go wrong, right? What could go wrong? All right, so when we first started working on building the certification environment for this exam, we really wanted to kind of follow the concepts you just heard Sarah and Peter and Meg talk about, which is we want something that's performance-based, real-world, something you might actually see out in the field. So what we did is we worked with our partner TrueAbility, and we built a Linux-based test environment on a Google Cloud platform. Now, what's going to let you do is that instead of doing multiple choice or short answer questions, you're going to be using the real tools that you use in your day-to-day work. You're going to be using a real browser, and you're going to be using a real text editor. And that's because we really want to see you do this, right? We want to see you code, test, and debug. This is basically what I do pretty much all day, right? I code a thing, I test it, and I usually have to debug it. And, well, I also maybe look at Stack Overflow occasionally, every once in a while, and maybe look at it again. Okay, and then also the meetings, of course, and then the planning about the meetings, and you gotta plan the meetings about the meetings slides. But other than that, it's mostly code, test, and debug. So we really want to see this, and we wanted, especially for tonight, I kind of wanted to show you what that looks like in the CERN environment. So I did something kind of silly, and I made a brand new coding challenge just for tonight, because I love HTML5, and I wanted to give you guys a taste of it. So what I want you guys to do, I could solve this myself, but I want you to help me do it. This is one of my favorite kind of prompts. It's a debugging prompt, right? So I'm going to show you an app in just a few seconds, and you're going to help me solve it, right? So that means I'm going to need everyone to put their detective hats on here, and let's see if we can solve this together. Now I'm going to slowly show you some code on these screens, and I'm going to probably skip through some of the code that isn't relevant, but if you really take a look and take a close look up here, you can solve it with me. All right, so here comes that live demo part. Hey, so far so good. The tab opened, so that's a good start. And just so you see that, it's just a tab, right? We don't ask you to download any special tools or SSH into any terminals or anything. All we have is just you log in, and you're right there in the Linux environment. Now, on the left-hand side, you see some of the tools that you might have on your own laptops, right? So we've got Google Chrome, Atom, Terminal, and this is what we currently support in the virtual environment. But on the right-hand side, we have instructions, right? Written by our very own Peter Jacobsen. And they look great. They give you all the instructions you need to take the test. We've got how to complete the exam, and cheating, and submitting the exam, and technical assistance, which is all very great. Thank you, Peter. But I'm going to go ahead and breeze through this real quick, because I really want to get to this debugging challenge. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to debug a service worker. Now, if you've been to HTML5 before, you've probably heard a lot about service workers already, right? So those are those scripts that run in the background of your browser, and they can actually perform actions even when your user isn't on the site, which allows some pretty cool behavior, like you can actually serve your website even when your user is offline. You can even send push notifications, background sync, all these really exciting things. But if you're anything like me, when I first started working with service workers, oh man, it's kind of a nightmare sometimes, because you have to relearn a lot of these kind of basic concepts about what the mobile web is like. And you really need to know your dev tools really well. So speaking of which, let's take a look at an app. All right, so this is going to be an app that should be served in offline mode. We should be able to not have any network connectivity at all, and it should still work, but something's going wrong with it. So this app is something that you've all been waiting for, I'm sure. People have been clamoring for it. It's the very first Mobile Web Specialist Certification Team app. Hey, so far so good. And it stars all your favorite developers who you just met. Meg Bauman, of course, and we've got first David Scales, right over there. Thank you, David. But Nick, I couldn't get a picture of Nick, but close enough. And then we've got Peter here, looking great, Peter, as always. Very natural in that shot. And we got some nerd who spends so much time on Photoshop. All right. So if you're like me, the first thing I want to do, I want to open up those dev tools. Awesome. I feel better already, right? Now, this DevTools, the text is a little bit bigger than you might expect, but hopefully people somewhere near the back can actually see what's going on here. Now, I'm going to go to my favorite tab, the DevTools, that application tab. It's my favorite. I'm going to go to service workers, and I'm going to try to put it in offline mode. I want to see if this is actually not going to get served in offline mode. I'm going to refresh the page, and with any luck, oh no! Okay, offline not working, right? But let's make sure that dinosaur still works. Okay, dinosaur is still working. Okay, so that's okay. All right. So we saw already now that offline mode isn't working as expected, right? So let me go ahead and go back online, refresh the page, and let's see. Oh, look. Oh, I missed this the first time. It's got a console error, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at the console. All right. So I've got registration success, exclamation point. I don't know who put exclamation point in there. That might have been me. And then we have some kind of type error promise problem here, right? So we know the service worker has been installed, but there's something going on in here, something red and angry. So let's go ahead and take a look what's inside of there. I've got some kind of promise being rejected, and it's somewhere around line 15-ish. All right, so we've seen enough of this app. I know I have. And let's go ahead and edit the code. Edit the code. It's going to load up Atom for me. And this is the text editor we currently support. And hopefully everyone can see the code up here. And on the left-hand side, you can see the folder structure, right? So we have an API folder. And that API folder has a JSON with all of our lovely team members in them. We have an image folder, a scripts folder for all of our JavaScript. So we've got an app.js and a service worker. And then we have our CSS and HTML. So because I love my service workers, let's take a look at there first, right? So I'm looking at the service worker. Raise your hand if you've worked with a service worker before. Service worker people? All right, now keep an eye up here what's going on here, right? So I've got a list of resources to cache, right? Now these are the things the service worker is going to cache so that way we can have access to them in offline mode. And I'm looking at them and seems fine to me, right? Seems like all the assets I have are up there. HTML, JavaScript, images. That all looks good. So let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Okay, we got two event listeners, right? We've got install. So on installation, that's when that console log came in and said that everything was registered. It's going to open the cache and then put everything that we just saw up top into the cache. That looks good. So then this fetch handler, is this something wrong with this? No, it looks okay, right? So when we see it here, a fetch coming in, we're going to go inside the cache and then return if it's in the cache, right? And if not, we're going to go to network and pick it up. So that looks good. All right, now I'm getting a little bit worried. What's wrong with this app? Okay, so app.js, this looks good. It's got a service worker being registered. It's in the scripts/serviceworker.js. If I scroll through here, this kind of just looks like boilerplate, getting the JSON, displaying it. But something's going wrong with the service worker here. Something's going wrong with the service worker here. Can anyone help me solve this app right now? There's some problem, some debugging issue right here that's stopping the service worker from serving stuff in offline mode. The error was some kind of unhandled promise in that fetch handler. And it's something to do with this folder structure over here, something in this area. Anyone think they can solve it? Raise your hand if you think you might have an idea. You don't want to speak out, but you might have some idea what it might be.
What was that about line 15?
What? Yeah, so that line 15, right? Yeah, it's line 15, which is just this event listener, right? It's trying to do its installation, trying to pull those things into the cache, but it couldn't do it for some reason. This guy right here pulled me from the fire, which I appreciate. So, the scope of the service worker, right? Who's actually, you said some people have worked with service workers before, but there's this part of the service worker called scope, right? Just give me 1 second. So the scope, what that allows us to do in a service worker is that a service worker can only intercept network requests from within the folder that it's in, right? That's the default scope of a service worker. So right now it's in a scripts folder, right? So it can only intercept the things within that folder that it's in, which is the app.js and the service worker.js. So what should I do you think? What should I do here? You could do that. That sounds really great. But because I'm lazy, I'm going to go ahead and move that straight to the root. Does that work for you? Does that sound good? All right. I mean, that sounds great. Yeah, well, let's see here. So if I were just, let's say I'm one not as smart as, is that Carlos back there? Carlos? And then I go back here and I just try to refresh. What would happen, do you think? Registration failed, Now, did everyone hear what Carlos said? I mean, if this was a normal exam and I had just tried to solve it, I would have gotten this question wrong. But did I forget something? What did I forget to do, Carlos? Oh, change the path. Right. So I'm going to go back to here, right? And the path is right here. Oh, okay. So now if I change this to serviceworker.js, nice. All right. So you guys think it's going to work? I hope so. All right, I'm going to refresh the page once. Oh, no more error. That's pretty good. That's pretty exciting. So but there's one more thing I have to do. I have to check to see if it's going to work in offline mode. I'm going to click the offline button. I'm going to get ready for the refresh. Drum roll. Refresh the page. Aye, there it is. Sweet. And that's basically what our certification is like. We give you problems and you solve them using tools that you already use in your day-to-day work, right? And if you make a silly mistake like forgetting to change the path, you can go back and fix it because you can test it, right? There's nothing I hate more than spending 2 hours on a problem and then missing it because I did a syntax error or something, right? This is going to let you actually do testing just like you do in your day-to-day work. So let me go back to my slides real quick. Bloop. Okay, these slides were in case things didn't go very well during the demo. The screaming would be intensifying by now, but we can go ahead and skip all these slides. All right, that was good. Excellent. Don't need any of those. So just to close out this demo is that we've had a lot of people take this test now and take that exam environment you just saw, and we've got a lot of really great feedback. Our certification is only getting better because concerned developers and excited developers are talking to us about what they liked and didn't like. We've had candidates now from India, China, Egypt, Brazil, and we're really excited about how excited they are. But I'll tell you, this is like a selfish note, I also want to hear from you guys, right? I want, during the breaks, please come up and talk to us because my favorite part of this job is hearing from you. Hearing from developers, because I want to talk about the nitty-gritty parts of the certification, like which text editors are you actually supporting right now? Where's my favorite, right? Or that service worker scope issue could be solved way easier with an optional argument, right? Or we can talk about whatever normal people talk about at parties. Sports? Sports are fun, right? But I just really want to hear from you. And so please contact us by talking to us, or you can email us at mws-certification-support@gmail.com or at google.com. A little bit better, at google.com. Awesome. Great, thank you so much. And I'm going to throw it back to Sarah.
Okay. Thanks, Bill. Actually, Bill, would you pull up your tab with your demo environment for a moment?
Yes, it's still, hopefully it's still alive.
It's still alive.
Hey.
I want to show folks something here. Let's see. I got to do this backwards. So notice that the text is all colorized in here. We're actually running linting in the editor. That's because the last thing you want to have happen is you forget a parentheses and you fail the question. No, you don't want that. So we've got the syntax coloring here. That's usually a pretty good indicator when things are going wrong. There's some linting going on in here. Again, indicators of when things are going wrong. And when you submit the question, we actually run a sanity check. It's a smoke test. For if any really old engineers will remember that one. You know, turn it on and see if smoke pours out. Right, well, that's what we do. We turn it on, we see if smoke pours out. If it does, we say to you, hey, you've probably got just a basic syntax error in here. You probably want to fix it first. So we're looking out for you. And when we test these, we're not like going and looking for patterns in the code. So maybe Bill fixed this one by moving service worker to the top level. But you could do it with registration with an explicit scope. And we actually don't care which way you do it, because we test the actual application. We have some really intensive, really detailed test code that hits and exercises your application. And seriously, I mean, I said Meg was our testing guru. She could probably start teaching classes in test automation. It's pretty serious stuff.